So I just saw over the weekend Dune Part 2, written and directed by Denis Villeneuve. Well, a co-writing credit, actually. Most of the people from the previous movie have returned, continuing in the adventure of Paul Atreides as he goes on to fulfill his destiny to become the Messiah to stop the evil empire led by Emperor Shaddam, played by Christopher Walken. Developing a romance with Chani, seeing his mother become one with the water of life, being gifted with this higher knowledge along with passing it on to him, Paul, as he's able to see into the future. I'm assuming that most of you have seen it by now, but in case some of you who are watching or haven't, there's your warning. Won't be able to cover everything, but I am going to go into some major details. I never got around to reviewing the first Dune. There was a lot to like about the first film on my end, but most of the time it was such a drag. I know a lot of people like it for that reason, and that's totally fine if you do. You could call me as someone who's part of the dumb masses who just wants everything to be bones of action, and I'll admit I do have some of those tendencies, but I can also appreciate a slow-paced narrative when it's there. In the case of Dune Part 1, it didn't really sit well with me some of the time. Towards the end of the movie, I thought, can we please just pick up the pace here? This is going on way too much. But a lot of that was necessary to build up the characters and where they were going to go in the next chapter, particularly with Paul Atreides. This movie does not waste any time in the slightest, knowing when to pause on certain moments with the characters while also realizing that it has to get to the important parts. Paul and his mother Jessica are now a part of the Freeman tribe and are initially suspected to be spies due to him killing one of their own in that duel that they had in the previous film, but eventually he manages to win the respect of the tribe when Jessica becomes a nun of sorts, drinking the water of life, which causes her unborn child to have the ability to communicate through her mind, leading us to certain details that are revealed towards the finale. Paul is wrestling with this idea that he's a messiah in the people's eyes. Even though he doesn't really see himself that way, he knows that he's destined for something greater, mostly driven by the fact that he wants to avenge his father's death. And he's kind of a reluctant hero of sorts, which I really like. But then he starts to do and say certain things that lead Chani to question whether or not he's actually doing this for the greater good. It's almost like he's blinded by the praise of the people that are looking up to him as a messiah, when he's able to prove himself in certain situations by riding a sandworm or taking down a certain dragonfly gunship while they're attacking a big giant tank in the middle of the desert. Given Paul's age, I think naturally he would be blinded by that sense of adoration. I realize I'm kind of going all over the place in this one, but all the people that show up in here mostly are the ones that I said are returning from the first film. There's a few new faces in here too, like Christopher Walken, who's the Emperor Shaddam. Hopefully I said that right. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pronounce any of these names correctly, so please forgive me for not being able to do so. Florence Pugh is the Emperor's daughter, and Austin Butler shows up as the Baron's youngest nephew. And for anybody who was doubtful on him breaking the typecast that he was locked into by playing Elvis a couple of years ago, it's safe to say that Elvis has left the building, because the moment he showed up on screen,
I was terrified.
I said to myself almost out loud, this guy is a freaking psychopath. If anything, Austin Butler might have a more diverse catalog under his belt in the years to come. Cause you gotta see it to believe it. Hey, 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 hey. Then there's Dave Bautista returning as a high-ranking official in the Emperor's army, and he's not really doing so well with being able to stop the rebellion from taking down their spice operations. But also, Anya Taylor-Joy shows up in a vision that Paul has when he drinks from the water of life, as his unborn sister many, many years down the line as she's grown up, giving him certain information that he learns through drinking the water of life, since she has the ability to communicate with him and his mother. Slight detour here. Everybody's talked about the production design, the cinematography, the aesthetic. Not really new, coming from me, but I would agree with all that. On all of those levels, it is a solid A+. I also couldn't help but notice certain similarities that it has with Star Wars and Game of Thrones, like the House of Atreides, similar to the House of Stark, the Imperial armies ruling over the certain part of the galaxy, and a rebellion's rising up. We're on a desert planet with these certain types of sand creatures. I like to think of this as Game of Thrones meets Star Wars. So inevitably, when they get to the finale of the big climactic battle and the Emperor is confronted by Paul Atreides, and he's challenged by Austin Butler's character in a fight, Paul gets stabbed a few times and gets bruised pretty badly. But inevitably, he's able to prevail, getting everybody except for Chani to rally behind him in order to start the religious war that was predicted in the visions, right? Is it? I don't remember everything. I'm kind of tired right now, so just bear with me. And of course, Chani, who's grown very disillusioned with Paul's approach, decides to walk away and ride away on a sandworm. Then boom, black screen and credits. Very reminiscent of Empire Strikes Back and Infinity War. Not my first time saying this, but the moment the credits started to roll, I thought, you're kidding me. That's it? I had a chance to look into it afterward. It looks like Denis Villeneuve is going to come up with another movie. It would be pretty stupid if they ended it right here, because there's still a lot of ground that they have to cover here. I'm sorry I wasn't able to cover everything, because I'm not really that well versed in the story, but in conclusion, this, in comparison to its predecessor, I would say is a lot more like it. The first one does have its place, and there was a lot of good stuff to be found in there. I just found this one to be a lot more exciting, and not so much of a drag as I felt the first one was. I realize that's somewhat of an unpopular opinion, and some people will feel differently. That's totally fine, because I could see arguments for both sides. I just like what this movie does here, where it keeps the momentum going. Oh, and I just realized the fact that the Baron is Jessica's father, her biological father, and Paul is actually related to this guy, that was, somewhat unexpected.
I feel cheap and violated.
But I'm really curious to see where they take it in the third film and how they're going to conclude Paul's story. And seeing if he's going to be able to fulfill the prophecy of being a messiah or becoming something that Chani fears that he's going to turn into, a martyr or a warmonger of some kind. And there's a lot of thematic elements that you could pull away from this movie. And I'm willing to bet that there's a lot of people out there, from philosophers, scholars, and religious scholars, that will be able to pull all these different kinds of themes out of this, as well as some political undertones too. But yeah, all in all, I was really pleased with what we got here, and I would really like to see where they continue it in the next one. Those are my thoughts on Dune Part 2. Thank you guys so much for watching. Comment below and tell me what your thoughts are on this movie if you've seen it. And as always, see you in the next one.